I'm Chris Nessie, host of Behind the Mic, Voices of the EPN, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Dr. Darla Bishop. Dr. Bishop helps children, families, and communities learn how to be financially responsible. This is a powerful episode. Dr. Bishop has the keys to helping you raise money-smart kids. So much to think about, so much to learn. Thanks for listening. Oh, by the way, before you go, it would be so cool if you helped out the podcast. How could you do that? Here are 3 ways. 1, tell a friend and share links. 2, go to my website and leave a review and subscribe. And 3, click on the link on my website homepage where it says, Buy Me a Coffee. By doing this, you could donate $1 or $2 to help me address the cost associated with producing the podcast. That would be so cool. You are awesome. Enjoy the show.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Miletto. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. With Dr. Steve Miletto.
A mother, a former high school educator, bilingual elementary school reading coach, children's book author, and passionate entrepreneur, Dr. Darla Bishop was motivated by her own challenging childhood in Detroit to help children learn. From motivating parents to transcend limiting beliefs about wealth to helping children to cultivate a positive financial mindset early in their lives, she believes that empowering families with financial knowledge is pivotal in creating prosperous and resilient communities for the future. Dr. Darla is known as the FinanSis, founder of FinanSis, LLC. She founded the company in order to use her innate gifts, humor, intelligence, and tough love, to help families and communities improve their relationship with money and set their children up to be financially responsible for life. Dr. Darla is all too aware of the correlation between low credit scores and short lifespan. Her mission is to change that narrative. A woman of many passions, Dr. Darla is an author, doula, military spouse, project manager, 15-plus year public health leadership veteran, healthcare consultant, financial accountability partner, professor of health policy, mentor, and real estate investor. But some of her proudest accomplishments are writing her children's book, Madeline's Money Adventure, with her daughter, Maddie, and coaching bilingual elementary students in reading through America Reads. Darla, thanks so much for being on the show. Say hi to everyone.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me, Steve.
Great to have you here. And Darla, I read in your bio that you're a former high school educator, bilingual elementary school reading coach. What is something that you learned in your days as a teacher that you always want to keep in mind?
Kids may seem like they're not listening to you, but you end up being a major part, especially as an educator or a parent or a coach, of their inner monologue when they're like first leaving the school setting, first becoming adults. And so what you say stays with them. And like 10 years later, they'll say, well, Mrs. Bishop, well, I had a different name back then, remember that time you told me this? And I'm like, I have no idea that I told you that. It sounds like me, though. It sounds like something I would have told you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You're so right. This is, it can be years later and you're standing in line.
Decades.
Yes, exactly. Remember that day when, oh my gosh, man. Well, you definitely had me in class. So that's, gotta love that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So you're a children's book author and the book is co-written by your daughter. Could you share a little about Madeline's Money Adventure? I think this is awesome.
Yeah. So I published a book a couple years back called How to Afford Everything. And, if you know anything about being a business owner and some of the tax and financial benefits of hiring your kids, I always have the kids do little jobs for me, things that are age appropriate. So for Maddie, I would have her, if I had a speaking engagement or to ship, more than a few books, I'd have her pack the back box for me and put the stickers on. And so that way I could legitimately pay her for working in the business because she does work in the business. And one day she was packing an order for me and said, well, Mom, you said I could write a book. When are we going to work on my book? And I said, sweetie, you want to write a book? She said, yeah, I have a lot of ideas. I said, well, we can write a book, but it has to be about money because Mom knows a lot about money And so we have to teach other kids about money. What do you think we can teach kids? And she said, oh, well, remember that time we went to, I won't name the store, and I wanted that unicorn stuffy, and you told me no. And I kind of take a deep breath because I don't know which direction this is going to go. And she says, well, but then I came home and I checked my piggy bank and I almost had enough. And then I did some jobs and I was able to get my unicorn. I was like, I do remember that. You still have that unicorn. She said, yeah, we should teach kids that when you want stuff, you got to check your piggy bank and then you got to do jobs and you can get what you want. And I was like, that is an excellent book story. Can I find someone to draw the pictures? And so it took me a few months to find an illustrator. But then I had Maddie tell me the story a few times. I said, well, how should we write it? And I recorded her telling me the story. And then I transcribed it. Then I moved things around just a little so that it would make sense for a book. And then I had her read it, and she said, oh, no, Mom, we can't say it like this. We have to say it like this. But we have to say this part first. I said, okay.
Nice.
And so we finalized the words, sent it to the illustrator, and that's how the Money Adventure was born.
That's excellent. And I love the fact how she's working with you on she's got the idea about the money thing, and she's helping you script that book. And that's so cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then once the book was finished, she told me, no, she didn't even tell me. She said in an interview, her school was so proud of her for putting out a book. So they did a little story on her. It's on YouTube. And she said, well, I'm going to write 3 books. The first book was about my unicorn, but my next book is going to be about getting my yellow belt in karate. And then the book after that will be about when the tooth fairy brings me money. So she's got a whole,
nice.
She's going to build a whole infrastructure here, and I'm all about it.
That is awesome. I love it. That's cool. That's cool that you're doing that, first of all, and then thanks for sharing. Nice. All right. So you're the founder of Piggy Bank Pathways. Share with us what it is and why you created it.
Yeah, so the work that I do with adults, right, for people who are out working and earning money to teach them about money, that's under kind of the FinanSis, how to afford everything umbrella. But for kids, it needed to be a little bit more fun, a little more playful, a little more joyful. And so we came up with this little word for for basically, this is Madeline's company, the Piggy Bank Pathways. And so through Piggy Bank Pathways, this is the children's book, which will soon be a series. We have more books coming out in the coming year.
Nice.
And we'll have some animated shorts on YouTube sharing some of these lessons. And, one of the cool things about having a doctorate is one of the things I learned from being both a high school teacher, being in the reading coach business, and teaching classes to get through my doctorate studies. I know how to build a curriculum. So while we were getting through the process of creating the book, I built a curriculum for pre-K to 5th grades because I know that many states, more than 30 now in the US, are adding in these K through 12 learning requirements for financial literacy. And a lot of it leans towards middle and high school. But frankly, that's too late. Like our core money habits are actually formed by age 7. By age 7, we already have ideas about how we use money, what it's for, how we get it, how we spend it. And so if schools had a formal research-backed way to integrate these lessons into math or social studies, then when they hear them again in a slightly different way in middle school or high school, they'll be really cemented. And I also know from my background in public health is that when we teach kids stuff, we teach kids things like hand hygiene, we teach kids things like seatbelt safety, that they bring those lessons home and enforce them with the adults around them. So I also have this not so secret dream that if we create these communities of elementary age kids who understand money and feel good about money and know that it's a tool and it's not scary and it's not stressful, that they'll help their parents get there too. Because maybe their parents never got the lessons. And some of the best lessons I've ever learned came from reading children's books to and with my kids. So why not have some children's books that are fun for the kid, but also informative for the parents?
That's so important. And, we started talking before we started recording, and so I'm going to bring us back to something we talked about because, one of the things that's going on in our world is that there's different ways in which money appears. And if you don't understand how it works, and so, for example, going back a bunch of years when I went to this military junior college. I went there, and they did this whole program where they were focused on your parents put money into an account, and then you got these checks. And so they were trying to teach you. They were wanting to make sure that the cadets learned how to deal with a checkbook and balancing it and keeping a budget and stuff like this. And I literally ran into people who I was friends with who thought that they had 24 checks, therefore they got plenty of money. It's like, what? And I know that happens today, even though a lot of people aren't dealing with checkbooks anymore. They are dealing with plastic and phones. Can you talk a little bit to that for just a second?
Oh, yeah. So I'm parenting a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And I think my kids are pretty money smart. These are money smart kids. But even they will say, we're in the store and they ask for something in the line. And I say, oh, no, sweetie, I didn't bring money for that. Or, oh, that's not what we're here for. Not a direct no, because usually I don't want to do the direct no because I want them to hear no all the time, right? Yeah. And so I was like, oh, I didn't bring money for that. Or they say, oh, well, just use your card. Just wave your phone. I'm like, sweetie, but you know that, yes, the card is here, the phone is here, but behind it is money, the things that we put in your piggy bank. And in order for mommy to get that, I have to go to work or give speeches or sell books. And so do you think I should go give a speech or sell books so you can have the bubble gum? Like, and trying to connect it, right. Which is hard work. It's hard work. It takes a little more time.
Oh, that's so powerful. They, because in this world today, one of the things I brought up earlier was that, I'm big fan of Major League Baseball, and we go to the park and we go to theme parks. And one of the things those places do, that Major League Baseball park, they no longer take cash. You have to use plastic or your phones, the money that's on them. And all I can imagine is, things are not cheap there, that park. And if you get a few too many of something, you may not realize how much you actually spent just one time scanning, swiping that plastic. But what do you think that some dangers around just, only having plastic? What do you think that's going to do with our young people? What they got to learn about, I think, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's a lot. I've actually talked to some of my credit union partners, and what they're finding is, when they're out in the community or they interact with maybe children of the credit union members, they find that the kids can identify currency. They know the dollars, the paper. They know 1 is 1 and 5 and 5 and 20 is 20. But the coins, they don't know what each coin is.
Wow.
And so we're already starting to lose, the younger generation understanding what the value of each of those items are. And so even though we are heavily moving towards digital currency and plastic and other ways to pay, I really encourage parents or caregivers or anyone who has kids in their life to still use coins and paper money around them so that they can identify it.
That's awesome. Makes perfect sense. And it's a little scary when all you do is swipe that stuff, because with cash, when it's gone, you go, wow, yeah, I spent that $20, went 5 minutes that I was at the park, And then if you're just using plastic, a month later, you start looking, going, why did I spend so much money that day?
Yeah. And some of it, I've had people on both sides where, as an adult, they're trying to improve their budget. They want to have more money saved. They want to be able to work less or work differently. They want to be able to go on a trip, right? They have some goal and they know that their budget isn't working to help them meet that goal. So they get in touch with me. We work together. We kind of look at things. And I've had some people who cash is the answer, that their problem is they're swiping, they're tapping, and so they're not paying attention. So they have to hold the physical cash in order to know that they have a limit, right? And if you're on social media, there are these folks on social media who really were promoting like cash stuffing, where it's like, okay, I'm on a cash system because this is how I'm going to control my spending. When the envelope is empty, then I'm done spending in that category. So that means no more of whatever that category was. For other people, they found that they would take money out of the ATM, they'd have the cash, and then a few days later, they're like, what did happen to all my cash? That they didn't have any record. And so for them, I actually put them on the no cash diet, where for a month, I told them, you're allowed to keep $20 on you at all times because some things come up. Maybe you're somewhere where they don't accept a card. Maybe your child at the last minute in the car ride says, "Oh, mom, it's a bake sale," right? Like, so you got to have some cash on you. So your limit, you're allowed to have $20 in your wallet at all times. So you have it. But otherwise, you need to use your card for everything because we need to see where your money is actually going so that we can make the shift. And so it's important to be bilingual when it comes to cash or plastic, because then in different parts of your life where maybe the plastic is easier or the paper is easier, you know how to work with both. And so we got to teach kids both.
That's awesome because that's a neat perspective on it. And as you were talking about that, I'm like, that makes perfect sense because then you see where it's all going and you start going, every time you stopped at that, whatever that is, that coffee shop or which I like using them as an example because some of them, that's a little more than that, than what you think. That adds up quickly if you're buying those specialty coffees. And but if you're able to keep track of it and go, wow, let's see if we can lower your time frame, the number of times you're going there or something. I can imagine that's very helpful to you to help someone create a budget and follow it. So good stuff. All right, so let's talk some more about financial stuff. In the beginning, when I was introducing this, we talked about something that I know that you focus on, which is this. Is it true that having a low credit score means your lifespan is 10 to 20 years shorter? And what can we do about it?
Yeah, and so studies show that growing up in a low credit score environment, um, compared to someone who is your peer or equivalent, so they're the same age, they're the same ethnic group, that the only difference, you're matched on everything except living in a low credit score neighborhood versus a high credit score neighborhood, that the life expectancy is lowered by 10 to 20 years. But if we just peel back the onion a little bit, you'll see why this really sad statistic makes sense. Where you live drives so much about your life and your health, right? Whether or not it's easy for you to get outside, it's safe, it's clean, to go for a walk, to have natural opportunities for physical activity, physical fitness built in. Like, I live in a neighborhood where there's a nature trail just a block away. We have nice sidewalks. The streets are wide. I'm not worried about my kids being hit by cars because it's not too busy in our neighborhood. Once we leave the neighborhood, it gets a little busy, but we've got enough in the neighborhood that if we go for a walk or even they want to ride their bikes in the street, I'm not too worried about them getting that play, getting that physical activity. If you live in an environment that is low credit score, that probably means you also have crowded schools. It probably also means that you might have some environmental toxins, things like pollution in the air or bad water or lead pipes in the houses or buildings. It may also mean that the libraries, if they exist, don't have as much resources as just a different part of town that has a fully stocked, fridge and a little dog food pantry in case people are having trouble feeding their pet, and a podcast studio. We have a library in our area that has a full podcast studio that you can rent out for free, right?
Nice.
But the other side of town doesn't have that. And so because where you live also means that your environment has certain aspects or not that shape your health, those things add up over time and can make you more likely to be sick, more likely to have poor health outcomes if you do get a condition or disease, and then also just live a shorter life. And that's just the time. That isn't even the studies that tell us that not only is it 10 to 20 less years that the people are living, but that their lives look completely different.
It's amazing when you think about it because you can see the impact. I mean, as a high school principal, I worked in some different communities, and one of them was very high needs. And you go into I'm looking to find the children who are not in school, and go over and knock on the door, and lo and behold, there they are. There's a big giant TV, but they don't have beds. They're sleeping on a mattress on the floor, and stuff like that. Whole different way of thinking.
Yeah, and the thing about that big screen TV you were giving the example of, I remember I grew up in a neighborhood that was not very physically safe, right? Like my mom did not want us outside playing for all types of reasons, right? So the safest place for us to be, for her as a working mom to know that we would be safe and home where she expected us, and we needed to stay in the house, do our homework, eat the food that she left, and watch TV. So that TV was our safety.
Gotcha.
And so it was a priority for us to keep the cable on and to keep the TV and the electricity on because that was how she kept us safe,
Nice.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas now I live in an environment where my kids, we have a little nature preserve nearby. My kids kind of go into the woods. We gave them rules like, okay,
Nice.
you can go into the woods only up until this point. If you see this house, you've gone too far, turn around, take your walkie-talkie so that way you can call an adult if you get a little too far. But my kids have a lot of freedom in our physical space because it's safe. They're living a completely different life than I was, right? And my mom didn't keep us in the house, right? Like she kept us in the house really out of a desire to keep us safe. And so that's why those priorities were that way. Whereas my priorities as a mom living a different life are completely different. I want to get these kids out of this house, get them out there too loud. They're messing the place up. They're leaving snacks everywhere. If they're outside, my house is clean.
Nice. I like that. I like that. But it does say a lot about it, the impact, and just understanding why someone would make certain choices over others is so important. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about some thoughts for parents here. What do parents need to know about raising money smart kids? What's some advice you would give them?
The key is talk about money early and often and do it intentionally. Because whether you know it or not, you're talking about money all the time, all day, every day. Yes, we can do this. No, we can't do this. I work too much. We can't afford that. We're talking about money all the time. So our kids are absorbing those lessons. They are listening to what you're saying. Those things are rolling around in their head. Even if it doesn't feel like it, it really is. And so if we could be a bit more intentional about how we talk about money when we're talking about money, which spoiler alert is all the time, then we can shift and leave that running internal narrative about what money is, how we use it, whether it's good or bad in our lives. We can skew it slightly more positive for our kids than maybe even we have on ourselves. And this is one of those things that's a little bit fake it till you make it, but with like a positive outcome, right? Like not to say, well, we're rich when that's obviously not true, but to point out the things that you do have going really well in your life, whether you have strong community through family and friends and neighbors, if you have a great school, if you have a wonderful job, if you have a safe and clean home, like pointing those good things out. And then when it's not so good, saying, hey, this part is hard, but we're going to work it out. And here's the things that mommy or daddy or grandma or auntie are trying to balance so that when you're grown up, if you ever have to balance it, you can see how we did it.
That's great information. I mean, it's amazing how different upbringing and understanding that there are things that we might have to overcome and overteach or whatever. And as a kid, you may understand a little bit about what you're seeing or not, whether, like parents are struggling because the business had to close or there's, one too many bills happening. So we got to cut back somehow and figure things out. And, it is interesting that there are things that the kids are watching and pick up on, especially when people are stressed in the home too. Good information though about thinking about helping kids become money smart. So what age do you think we should start talking to kids about money? Is there something too soon or?
So no, because you're already talking about money around them. So there's that. But then also around 3, because around 3 is when kids are asking for different things. And so there are age and stage appropriate ways to build little money lessons in along the way, right? Like things about how to count, how to count coins, how to count dollars, how to count things, things like what you have to trade in order to get something. So in Michigan, when you get soda can pops, you have to pay 10 cents for each one. And so one of the things I taught the kids early is if they collect all their cans, we can trade them for money. So they get that idea that, oh, I can trade things or work when they do little jobs. Families have a wide variety of how they want to do allowance. And it is good to sometimes pay kids to do work. Now, if your family's like, you live here, that means you keep this house clean. Yes, absolutely. Sure. And it is good to every once in a while pay kids for doing work because, again, that reinforces that, hey, we trade our time, our talent, our skills for money. Let them do. Almost every kid I've ever met has some business idea. The classic one is a lemonade stand. I knew a kid who used to take the flower pods out of a flowers and package them up in little envelopes and sell them to the ladies in the neighborhood who like to garden. And so I
Nice.
know almost every kid I know started some kind of business, right? It's snowing where I'm at today, shoveling snow and asking for money in exchange for it. So let your kids do those things and then ask them what they're going to do with the money and guide them to say, well, look, every time we have money that comes into our lives, there's three things we have to do with it. We have to save a little for later because maybe we want to buy something special that we don't have enough money for yet. Or we might learn about something that we don't know about today, but if we've been saving money, we can get that. We can spend some of it because we have money. Money is supposed to be spent. It's called currency for the very reason that it's supposed to flow. It's supposed to move. It's supposed to leave your hands and go to other people and then come back to you, right? So, yes, it's fine to spend. Be thoughtful about it because once it's spent, you have to go trade more lemonade or more time or more jobs to get more of it. So just think about it before you spend it. And then we also got to save a little bit to give away. And the reason it's important for me to introduce the earning, saving, spending, and sharing is because building in that generosity in small doses makes it more likely that you won't raise mean grown-ups.
I like that.
Is the nice way I'll say that.
That's a good way to say it. Very nice. Well, thanks so much for talking about that. It's interesting because I don't know if I think it becomes one of those topics that tomorrow will be a good day to talk, and then tomorrow comes, and then well, maybe Thursday will be a better day to talk, and before you know it, they're 15 years old and has still whatever. When it comes to money, so it's not really thinking about the money that they're spending, and you're going, boy, I wish I talked about it when they were a little younger.
I'm so glad you said that because I think sometimes people think, well, it has to be this whole show. I need to sit them down at the dinner table and show them the checkbook and the register and pull up the online banking and like make this whole thing of it, right? But no, 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 work it into your regular stuff. You're at the grocery store. One of the things I have my kids do, and I told you earlier in the conversation, I have little kids, they're 5 and 7, but they're really good at recognizing numbers and letters. My 7-year-old reads very well. My 5-year-old's almost there. He's almost reading, right? He can
Nice.
recognize a few words. And so I will say, okay, look at the two apple juices. How much does this one cost? And they'll tell me, okay, and how much does this one cost? And they'll tell me. And I'll say, which one is bigger? And they'll tell me which one is bigger. I say, okay, which one costs more? And so, like doing comparisons, even in that 10-second interaction in the grocery store, I've just taught them how to check prices and how to compare prices and how to compare sizes of things so that they're getting a little taste of value. But then when they're a little older, I'm going to say, do you know why we buy this apple juice? And they're say, oh, because it's the one that we like the taste of. And I might say, actually, no, it's the one that has the best price. So we drink it all the time, so we like it. So that lets you know that, yes, we like it, but it also is the best price. So tasting different things, even if it's a lower price or a higher price, can help you figure out what you like. And you might like them both and so pay the lower price so you can keep more money in your bank account for other things that come up or that you really want. And so there are all these different ways to work these lessons in if you just like are a little bit intentional and thoughtful about it.
That's awesome. Love it. I love it, and so much so. And the little lessons can come at any moment, just like that. I like that. All right. So tell us a little bit about the curriculum that you designed for kids to learn finance. I mean, because you developed your own. Let's share that with us.
Yeah, so when I was looking around for resources for kids, it turns out a lot of them skew older, right? Which makes sense because, once you're 10, 11, 12, you might be doing things in trading, babysitting, or arts or something and making a little bit of money, right? And then by the time you're in high school, whether it's 14, 15, or 16, you might be even working at the ice cream shop or at a store. And so it makes sense that we'd be talking about money in books and magazines for slightly older kids because they are probably working or have a way to work to get money. But kids have money too. Like, I don't know about you, but every time my son goes to the barbershop, the barber who's just a friendly, just the nicest guy ever will say, "Hey, I need you to go sweep the floor." And he has my son sweep the floor and he hands him $2 or $5 depending on what he has that day.
Nice.
So my son will come home from a haircut and have money in his pocket. Or he'll go visit Granny and he comes back with money in his pocket. We're losing teeth now, right? So the tooth fairy is bringing money. So surprisingly, my kids have money all the time. And so I have all these opportunities to be like, well, what are we going to do with it? Are we going to put it in the real bank or are we going to put it in the piggy bank? And then we got to separate some. How do you want to separate? Is there something you want to buy to share with someone else? Do you already have an idea about what you're going to do with your giveaway money? Or you want to still make it bigger and so you can do something bigger or more elaborate for your friend or for your brother or for your sister, right? And so it's like, okay, if we just add a bit of intention and do it all the time, it also gets easier. So I'm absolutely the mom who's talking about money all the time with my kids. But that's why they're money smart, because we're talking about money all the time.
That is so awesome. And I got to tell you what you just made me think about. In my marriage, and you have to understand, the money side seriously comes from her side. All right. Being able to be better at all that sort of stuff. But like one of the things you were talking about is those little cards when you go through the grocery aisle and they tell you about the ounces and how much per ounce or, whatever per unit that that product is. And my wife really gets focused on that sort of stuff. And I've learned a lot about that stuff going in there and it's all come from her, me listening to her talk about why she's choosing this over that. So I think it's cool. So you can teach an old dog new tricks.
You can. And that also that helps me explain why we buy, even though they see the same apple juice or the same bread at one of the stores we shop at, they know, oh, but we don't buy that here. We buy that at the big box store, like the Costco or the BJ's or the Sam's Club, right? And I explained, well, we buy that at the bigger store because the price is much better. We can get almost 2 loaves of bread for the same price as one when we buy it at this store. So that's why mommy likes to buy it there, because we get more for the same amount of money, right?
Nice.
So I'm teaching these lessons, even like, so when we're in the store and they're like, but we're out of these, but we can't buy that here. It costs too much.
Excellent. Love it. Great lessons. Love it. All right. So, something that you speak about is budgeting without the bad vibes. How to make your money work for you. Could you share about the importance of budgeting? Let's go there for a little bit.
Yeah, I remember when I was first starting out to really trying to get my money together, like budget was like a bad word. It's like, I'm going to be on a budget. Like people use it as it's a limit.
Right.
It's a limit. Like even my 7-year-old, I had to really like every, once in a while I have to reset her because I'll be like, sweetie, do you know what a budget is? Because we're going to shop for a toy for your friend and your budget is going to be $25 for the birthday party toy. And she'll be like, oh yeah, well, a budget's a limit. I'm like, yes, but really it's a plan. So I had to shift to thinking about a budget as a limit. Like I'm only allowed or I'm not allowed to do this as a plan, something more neutral. And that made a huge difference in my ability to stick to the budget because it's like, oh, it's just a plan. It's not a limit. I'm not telling myself I'm not allowed to do stuff. I'm just making choices about what's more important or what will have a better chance of getting me to what I said was a big goal of mine, whether it's having some money saved by the time I graduate so that wherever I get a job, I can move and not be worried about whether I can pay for the U-Haul truck. Or it's because I really want to go on spring break before I graduate and all my rich friends, because I have a lot of them at this university, are all going to spring break. So I need to save some money so I can go with them and have that really fun experience because the pictures always look really cool when they come back and show them after they've gotten them developed, because back then you had to get them developed, right?
Yes.
And so it was one of those things where it's like, then when people would be like, oh, that's right, because you're on a budget. And I'd be like, that's right. I have a plan for my money. Why don't you? And so it let me have a little bit of like, confidence and strength and like, you're trying to make it into a bad thing, but it's not, right? It gave me an answer to my friends who'd be like, oh, right, your budget. I'm like, that's right, my budget. How come you don't have one?
Nice. I love it. Yeah, it's a rough thing for those who operate without any thoughts about it. It's when you have to have that job that to help you pay for whatever, or you're doling out funds to help you save for something, whatever your reasoning is. And it's like it's important when you have to explain to yourself, okay, I got to make sure I can eat, and I got to make sure that I can keep a roof over my head and the lights on, and on top of that, then so what else can fit into my budget? And yeah, it's so important. Just so important. It's not about being mean. Oh, you're so mean.
Right. And it's okay to build. In fact, I highly encourage you build some fun into it on purpose. Make the plan with fun in it. Because if you have a budget, if you have a plan with the things that you like built in, then it's much easier to stick to it. I remember when I was really tight on a budget, on a plan, like kind of an aggressive plan, because I had a deadline to save a certain amount of money. I remember being at the grocery store, and there's a specific apple that's my favorite apple. Gala apples. I just like, that's the apple I like. They're the right crisp, they're the right sweet. They last long enough, so if I don't eat them the same day, like I'm not too worried about it. They last a long time in the fridge, and they weren't on sale that day. And I almost got this other apple that I just really don't like. I think the skin's too thick. Sometimes I feel like they're mealy. They're not the right sweet. I like an apple with a little crisp to it. And I almost made myself buy the apple I don't like. And I had to like almost like negotiate with myself in the middle of a grocery store, probably looking insane. Like, girl, just buy the apple you like. I'm not telling you to buy 30. I'm just telling you to buy 3 of the apples you like. And it's amazing how those tiny pleasures that really me buying those 3 apples versus the one that was on sale maybe cost me an extra dollar, right? But that week when I packed my lunch and I grabbed the apple out of my bag and I took that first bite, I'm like, that's my favorite apple. So I had that tiny piece of joy from a dollar, right? And I almost deprived myself of that joy 3 times that week over a dollar. Because I know every time I eat that other kind of apple, I'm like, I'm gonna eat it because we don't waste food in this house. But this is not my favorite, right?
Right. Oh,
And
yeah.
so build a little bit of pleasure in now, because then it's much easier to be on a plan, even if the plan is a little bit strict.
Love it. That is awesome. Just awesome. One of the things I got to make sure that I mention is that you're the author of How to Afford College Plus Grad School and the book How to Afford Everything. Tell us about your books and what inspired you to write them.
So, How to Afford Everything came out of me reading more than 100 personal finance books to
Nice.
try to understand money. I knew that growing up, we had a lot of just weird, bad, traumatic experiences. And I remember distinctly thinking, man, we wouldn't be going through half of this stuff if we just had more money, because the adults around me were actually very resourceful. Like these were some of the most resourceful, mostly women. Like I'm thinking about my mom and my aunts, right? Her sisters. And like these women could put together a Christmas dinner off of like what felt like 3 empty fridges. Like, how did you take 3 empty fridges and come up with this beautiful, delicious, like love-filled meal for all of us? Like, how did you make that happen, right? So it wasn't that they were bad at managing their resources, they just didn't have enough resources. I remember thinking, like, we wouldn't be going through half of this stuff if we just had more money. So when I went to college, I started reading books to try to understand money. And once I read 10, I read another 10. Then once I read 20, I read another 10. And then all of a sudden, 15 years later, I'd read all these books. And it turns out that personal finance comes down to 3 key messages. All the books had the same 3 key messages. Live below your means. Whatever your means are, live below them. Be careful with debt. Now, depending on who wrote the book, the message can be, debt's okay, just be careful with it. Debt is how you're able to go to school and buy a reliable car and get into a house. And some are like, debt is evil, avoid it at all costs. And some stuff in between, but be careful with debt. And the third key message is save for the future. Sometimes it's save for next week because something's going to happen. Sometimes it's save for 65-year-old you so you can retire. Sometimes it's save so that you can go on a trip in a year, right? But it's save for the future. So if you're reading a book and it doesn't have those 3 messages in it, you're not reading a money book, you're reading a something else book. But none of these books they were missing two things. There were two things that were missing from all these books I read that I needed as someone who was trying to figure out money. One, I needed a way to fit my family in my budget. For me, as I was building my own fortune, right? I say that with finger quotes. As I was building my own fortune, I also had younger siblings at home that were still in that not great environment, but I didn't want them to suffer or be smaller because they were still in that not great environment. So if my sister called me and said, "Oh, I'm thinking about going out for the softball team, but I know you got to have cleats and you got to pay something for the uniform, so maybe I won't do it." Because I happened to be in college at the time, it was really easy for me to find money. I could pick up more hours at the lab I was working in. I could go do a psychological study because they always needed students to do experiments on. I had ways to make money. So I'd be like, "Oh no, I'll send you the softball money. Go try out. Like it's not a big deal." And that was like really important to me. It was really important to me to be a resource, to send money when it was asked and even when it wasn't. And so to have dozens and dozens of books to tell me nobody gets a thing from you. They're all cut off until you're stable. That wasn't my reality. That wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I needed a way to know that it was okay to do both, that it was okay for me to save for my future, but also still contribute to the family. And how do I even do that? Like none of the books told me how to do that because they just said, ignore those family members. When they ask, say no. Tell them you don't have it. But that wasn't true. I did have it, or I could get it really easily because I was now in a zip code that was resource rich. So I could go and find the $50 or $100 within a couple of weeks that my mom didn't have that same ability in the environment she was, right? The other thing is I told you I grew up in some rough situations. So I knew some of the things not to do. But knowing what not to do is not at all the same as knowing what to do. And so there weren't that many books. I think I give credit to about 7.5 of those 100 books to tell you, like, if you don't know where to start, here's where to start. Here's where you go next. Here's where you go. So, like, I need a plan because if you give me a plan, I'm super good at homework. I'm still pretty good at checklists. I can follow the plan, especially if I'm just not sure where to start and where to go next. And so that's what I put into my book. I was like, if you live in a situation where it's important for you to have your family in your budget because of community, because of where you come from, because it's just part of one of your core values, here's how you can support the family and build your future at the same time. It might mean you're in debt for 6 more months, but you also made sure that your sister crossed the graduation stage with her softball championship belt, and that was important to you, right? And then also, if you don't know where to start, do this thing first, and then go here. So then because once you start, you get that momentum and you keep going. The hardest part is starting. So that's how to afford everything came about. How to afford college was kind of an accidental thing. I had told a story on a different podcast about how I went to grad school for all these years. I was in graduate school for 8 years at a very expensive private institution. And I in a very expensive city in the US. So also having, high cost of living. And I told them, well, I paid like $2,000 out of pocket for that degree. And they're like, what? How did you do that? Because doesn't that degree cost like 100 and something thousand? I was like, yeah, probably should have cost me like 160. They're like, how did you go to grad school for 8 years for $2,000 out of pocket? I said, oh, well, I did this and I did this and I did this. Don't you know how to do that? And they were like, no. I was like, my sister knows how to do it because I taught her. All my classmates know how to do it because I taught them. Wait, people don't know that you can do all these things to pay for college? I'm gonna write an ebook about it. I'll have it out next week. So drank some coffee and wrote an ebook overnight. And then I had somebody edit it so that it made sense. So that was just kind of somebody was, I can't believe you do this. And I was like, I can't believe you don't know this. I need to tell people.
That's so important. I got to tell you, it's neat that it came out of just that experience, but it is so true that so often they do not know what is out there for them that can make that way more affordable. And instead they're saddled up with, or their child is saddled up with bills that will last for a while because they did not pursue some of that other information or did not know that it was there. So cool stuff. Good. Thank you for writing those books. That's awesome. All right. So I got a scenario here for you, and it works like this. If you were talking with an audience of parents about how families can rewrite their money story no matter where they start, what is something that you would want them talking about when they left your presentation? What's that thing that you say at the end that's going to make them go, it's going to have them talking about what
The very first thing that I'd have them do once they left me is I say for the next 2 or 4 weeks, because 4 weeks is hard, 2 weeks feels easier. I want you to pay attention to everything you say about money when your kids are within earshot. And you were not judging what you're saying, we're just taking note of it. So open a note in your cell phone. We all got our cell phones nearby and make it quick. Well, I just said we can't afford that, or I just said yes, we can buy that next month, or I just said, oh yeah, we're saving up for the trip, right? Anything you say that about money. And then after about 2 weeks, go and look in your notes and scroll through them and say, if these words, if these phrases, if these sentences are running through my kid's head, is that going to make them feel good about money, neutral about money, or bad about money? And am I okay with that? Because your voice really does become their inner monologue, whether you believe it or not. And so if you observe how you talk about money, and you might even catch your kids saying a few things about money too, write those down. And after you review the tape, if you're totally happy with how you said things, great. Don't change a darn thing. But if there are some things you're like, I don't know that I want them repeating that. I don't know that I want them to be thinking that. Then slowly start to shift it, replace it, change it. So if you say, well, mama's broke, so no, we can't do that. Don't call yourself broke anymore. You say, well, we got to make a plan for it. So how much does it cost? When do we need it by? Do you have any ideas about how we could get it? Is there someone we can borrow it from? Is there somewhere where we can get it used so it costs less? Is there someone who's an older person on the team who might already have that and we could use theirs because it doesn't fit them anymore, right? Like engaging your kid in the creativity and the resourcefulness without calling yourself broke. And you might find a fantastic solution just by doing that differently.
That's so powerful. I love it. And that would be great to have them talking about that as they're leaving, because probably going to see some action happen, or at least an argument about what should be happening. So good stuff. I love it. Darla, we're about to finish up, and one of the things I need you to share with everybody is, where can our listeners find additional information, connect, and learn more?
Oh, thank you. The best place to find me is darlabishop.com. Look for darlabishop.com. It has all the links and all the pathways to anything else you might need to know about me.
Awesome. I'll put that in my show notes so it's easy for them to reconnect with you. Good stuff. So I got one last question for you, and it's a question I like to ask my guests, and it goes like this. Do you have a teacher in your past who made a difference in your life? If so, who was it, and what would you say if given a chance to say thank you?
Oh, I have so many, but I'll name two. I know you asked one, but I'm going to name two. Mr. Color was my high school math teacher, and I loved math, and I didn't know if it was okay for me to love math, and he loved math, and so it made it okay for me to love math, and so I'm so happy. Now, money is more than math, but being good at the basics of math does help quite a bit. The second teacher she has a different name now because she's gotten married since, but at the time her name was Miss Linhard. She was my 10th grade social studies teacher, but she was also our class sponsor. So, you used to be a high school teacher. So each class you need a teacher who's like the person who makes sure you get through homecoming and prom and helps you make the reservations. Because some adult has to do that stuff. As the teenager, you can plan it, but you still need an adult to sign the contract and stuff like that. So she was our class sponsor. And she knew about some of the things happening in the background in my life. And I'd asked her to write my recommendation letter for the Gates Millennium Scholarship. And I don't know what this woman wrote, but whatever she wrote convinced the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to cover my tuition all through college and part of my graduate school, the first time, because I went to graduate school twice. And having that scholarship allowed me to go to the school that I really wanted to go, and I didn't know if I'd be able to, and also put me in a resource-rich environment so that I could send things home to my siblings. And my siblings are doing awesome. My sister is a CEO. My brother is a financial planner. And that's some of that math from the math teacher, because I had a scholarship. And that just made it easier for all of us to go to college. So that's why I wrote How to Afford College too, is if going to school will make a difference in your life, I want you to be able to go because I was able to go.
That's awesome. And congrats. That's cool. And those scholarships are very impactful at the Gates Foundation. So kudos to you. Congrats on all of that and what it allowed you to do. That's so cool. Thank you for sharing. Darla, thank you so much for talking with us about the Piggy Bank Pathways, your books, Madeline's Money Adventure, How to Afford College plus Grad School, and How to Afford Everything, budgeting, credit scores, and raising money smart children. What an awesome focus you have. Wishing you the best in all you do.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.